Sorry, I gotta take another drink.
Sure.
Okay. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Star Trek Deep Space Nine review show. My name is Fletcher. About to say hello is Data.
What's up?
Today we're going to recap, discuss, and rate Season 1, Episode 11, The Nagus. Alternate title, The Princess Bride?
Oh, I get it. I would have just gone for like inconceivable or whatever, but yeah, okay.
Yeah, you gotta put a little... Also maybe My Dinner with Zek?
Yeah. Breakfast at Zekinis at Quarks. Breakfast at Quarks.
Yeah, Breakfast at Quarks. There will be full spoilers through this episode in this review. And since we both have seen the whole series, possible, accidental, minor spoilers for later in the show. But we will try to avoid doing too much of that. But really, we won't. And we will spoil everything. This episode originally aired March 21st, 1993. And it was kind of in the middle of a next-gen hiatus, I think. So there were still no next-gen episodes around this time.
Cool.
Next next-gen episode will be Starship Mine, which is the famous Die Hard on the Enterprise episode.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, recap for this episode. An airlock door opens and a Ferengi man pops his head out and furtively checks around. Seeing the coast is clear, he gestures behind him and a mysterious, robed figure emerges, guided by a purple-haired giant. But first, let's get the B-plot out of the way. Jake Sisko is in his room gathering up pads and putting on his shoes, presumably getting ready for school. His father enters and enthusiastically tells him about a planned vacation to Bajor to see the Gratitude Festival, the biggest Bajoran holiday of the year. And he's arranged a visit to the Fire Caverns. It sounds like a kick-ass trip, but Jake passes in favor of watching a freighter get a maintenance check.
Yep. Well, they have some of those new tractors or whatever. They might get to see one of those.
Anti-gravity tractors or gravity tractors. I mean, I'm sure, Sisko could arrange for him to see those tractors on Bajor, but whatever. Like, it doesn't sound like they're actually going to take the tractors off the freighter, so I don't know.
Yeah, I don't. But, it's more about he's hanging out with his buddy,
right.
who's way cooler than his dad.
Right, he's at that age.
Yep.
At school, Chief O'Brien is subbing, as Keiko is still back on Earth.
So yeah, I guess he came back and she stayed?
I guess my theory is he ran out of, Starfleet PTO and had to come back. And then she decided to hang back for a little bit with her mom or whatever. O'Brien asks Nog about his ethics homework, but Nog says Vulcan stole it.
Oh, gosh.
Jake is initially reluctant to back this story, as it is the stupidest excuse ever.
Yep.
But once Jake does corroborate the story, the chief seems satisfied.
No, he still seems pretty suspicious.
Well, my theory is he later decides there's something fishy about the story, and he advises Sisko that Nog is a bad influence on Jake. To which Sisko is like, I'm way ahead of you.
Like, I know that. There's just nothing I can do about it, really.
After a rebuke from the Nagus, Rom pulls Nog out of the school, leading to a fight between Jake and Nog, which ends with Nog calling Jake a stupid human.
Stupid.
Yep. Later at dinner, Jake discusses the situation with his dad, who says it's probably for the best, since humans and Ferengi don't see eye to eye. Jake brings up during this conversation that Nog can't read, which brings up 1,000 questions, but whatever. Later, Jake and Nog meet up on the promenade and make up, deciding to remain friends in defiance of their racist fathers. Sisko notices that Jake has been coming in late due to hanging out with Nog. At one dinner, for which Jake is a no-show, Dax suggests that Sisko go find Jake and give him a talking to. He locates Jake in a cargo bay, teaching Nog to read. He sneaks out without intervening.
Yeah, I love Dax's thing. It's like, look, I've been a mom a lot and a dad a lot, and I think you should go do this, but I wasn't really a very good mom or dad, so maybe you shouldn't
I've always
listen to me.
been a crappy parent, so whatever. And then she just steals all his stew.
Yep.
She's like, I think you should leave, and I will eat all your stew.
It was a plot to get the stew.
Yeah, she didn't want to go play chess or whatever in the holosuite. She wanted that stew. We all know what's up.
Yep.
Later on the promenade, Jake and Nog are checking out a hot Vulcan lady, possibly affiliated with the homework stealers. When Cisco shows up to give Jake a proud fatherly hug, he tells Jake he is a great boy, then tells him to go back to girl watching with his friend.
Yep. You have permission to stay out as late as you want. I'm sure you are always doing good things.
Yep. I kind of wonder if that Vulcan lady was like a distraction, and then the Vulcan homework thieves stole Nog's homework again.
That's how they get you.
That would be great that would be a great like final beat to the episode is like Jake and Nog are staring at this lady and these Vulcans come and like pick the pads out of their pockets and run off.
Vulcans are notorious for stealing pads from children.
Yeah, exactly. Or maybe they read Nog's ethics essay and they're like, oh, we must bring this back to the Academy at Vulcan for review. But I guess Nog can't read, so he couldn't have written his essay unless he dictated it.
Yeah, I assume the pad has like a talk to text
exactly.
thing.
Yeah, who knows? Also, does Nog speak English?
That's a good question. I mean, they don't have like comm badges that are, universal translator connected or whatever because they're kids, so I guess maybe.
But, like, was Nog in the Roswell episode where they were unable to communicate with the Roswell humans?
That's a good point. I mean, spoilers.
Yeah. Oh, man, who knows what could happen in the future of this show? Maybe that, maybe something else.
Yep. But yes, I think you're right.
So I'm kind of, or does Jake speak Ferengi? I don't know.
Seems less likely.
I don't know. I mean, he's a go-getter. He's interested in other cultures.
I guess we also find out in that episode that the Ferengi have like their universal translators like shoved down in their ears. So maybe that's related somehow.
Could be. Although, where are people's... So are you saying it's established that the comm badges are where the
thought so.
Translators usually are? Now
I'm going to have to look this up to make sure that I'm not just imagining that.
I'm sure it changes based on, like, what the plot needs.
Yep.
Anyway, main plot. At Quark's, Quark chews out Rom for returning a lady's lost purse. He punishes Rom by ordering him to polish all the rails, a task which Rom quickly passes off to Nog.
Yep.
Quark is exchanging jokes with Bourne when they are interrupted by a man identifying himself as Krax, who is accompanied by his father, Grand Nagus Zek. Quark goes into full suck-up mode and kisses the Nagus' scepter. The Nagus is in the mood for some action and orders a grand tour of Quark's 5 favorite holosuite programs. Quark worries that the old Nagus will not be fit enough to keep up, but the Nagus seems to have no problem and loudly enjoys his time in the holosuites. While the Nagus is occupied, Quark frets to Rom that the Nagus intends to force Quark to sell his bar. Soon the Nagus emerges from his holosuite adventures, chugs Tang out of an Erlenmeyer flask, and menacingly tells Quark to invite him to dinner.
See, so we're getting really the first look at a lot of like Ferengi culture stuff in this episode. Sure.
This is like Ferengi lore dump.
Yeah, but it's also clearly like not. They haven't decided on a bunch of stuff yet. Mm-hmm. But I just feel like it's a really bizarre thing to have. This culture that's all about like trade and selling and buying stuff to be like, oh yeah, when like the president of business shows up, you have to like let him use your holosuites for free, and if he wants to buy your bar, you have to sell it to him for whatever he wants to pay. And I'm like, That seems like the opposite of like how business would work. I don't...
Well, I mean, he's such an amazing businessman. Like, if you refuse him, who knows, what horrible things you might do to him. I was thinking this episode is like they're dialing in the Ferengi, and they almost have it.
I mean, not Rom. We're still a good ways off on like Rom where he's going to be.
I mean, we're way closer to Rom than we've ever been before.
Yeah, that's probably true.
It's like Rom is like, he is now on his path to Romness. But I just get this picture of like somebody dialing in a focus, and it's like they hit it, but then they go too far, and they're like, "Ooh, go back." That's almost it. So I think that's where we kind of are with the Ferengi right now. At said dinner scene, all of the Ferengi scarf down various bugs, causing me to put down my general toes for a little bit. Zek congratulates Quark on his brilliant move of opening a bar on a station where a wormhole was about to be discovered.
Yep. Very slick.
Yep. Zek reveals his purpose for coming to Deep Space Nine. He intends to hold a conference at Quark's to discuss future exploitation of the Gamma Quadrant. The high number of Ferengi arriving on the station causes alarm among the command staff.
As it should.
Don't want to be racist, but...
You don't want a lot of these guys around. Like somebody's like, I think we should hide the silverware, and Sisko's like, we don't have to go that far. As if there's literal silverware that he would be hiding if he thought that they did need to go that far.
Yep. They advise Odo to be on alert, but of course Odo is way ahead of them. At the conference, the Grand Nagus praises the discovery of the wormhole as the dawn of a new era of scamming unsuspecting Gamma Quadrant aliens. And to lead this great undertaking, he appoints Quark, whom he names the new Grand Nagus. This move outrages the other Ferengi, especially the Nagus' son, Krax, and they all get mad and take it out on their chairs, in what I imagine is the traditional Ferengi display of disapproval.
See, stupidly, as they're like, all the Alpha Quadrant people think that for some reason that we're like can't be trusted. So now we've got this new place that we can go. Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh, so they're gonna want to be like, we need to be careful not to create this reputation for ourselves again. Yeah, but instead they're like, yes, we can scam so many people and they'll have no idea.
I mean, it's just like there's so many new aliens in the Gamma Quadrant, You can just be scamming these people for years, and your reputation will probably stay intact.
Yep. No, nothing could possibly go wrong with that plan.
Yep. I'm sure all the aliens in the Gamma Quadrant are super nice and gullible.
Never talk to each other.
Yeah. They're not under one giant unified evil empire or anything. Don't worry about it. Later, Quark struts proudly down the promenade, decked out with a Nagus' robe and scepter. He's approached by one of the other Ferengi, who showers him with veiled threats. Quark runs to the old Nagus to ask for advice, but in the middle of their conversation, Zek suddenly slips into what I suppose is the Ferengi death pose, where he kind of tilts his head down and puts his arms up like a T-Rex or something. A funeral for the high exalted supreme leader of the Ferengi people is held in Quark's bar, and attended by at least 6 people. Krax sells discs of Zek's, or someone's, desiccated remains.
I was about to say, I feel like there's going to be some lawsuits later over this after, the end of the episode comes.
I don't know. I feel like in Ferengi culture, scams are encouraged. So I don't even know if there's a law against this type of thing.
Interesting point.
Rom begs Quark for the opportunity to take over the bar while Quark acts as Nagus, but Quark laughs him off. Odo shows up at this funeral of a foreign head of state and announces his general suspicions to everyone. He also makes it clear that his disdain of Quark continues, despite his elevated title.
So I guess Quark's plan is that he's going to be in charge of the entire Ferengi Alliance, but also still just count receipts every day in his one bar.
I guess. I mean, why not? Odo leaves and Quark spots a coin on the ground. He leans over to pick it up, just in time to save himself from a bombing attack. Quark is interrogated by Odo and Sisko, who are generally not happy about bombing assassination attempts taking place on the station.
Sure.
Odo makes note that it's suspicious that Zek's manservant didn't show up at the funeral. What's that guy's name?
Mayhardu, yeah. Yep. You gotta point out that the attempted murder weapon was a smello bomb. They keep talking about how ridiculously accurate it is and how it's like, oh, it's practically impossible to get away from these. Quark got so lucky. They smell you out.
Yep, that's right. Yeah, it's guided by your pheromones or whatever. Yes. Quark holds court in what I assume is his office, handing out Gamma Quadrant opportunities to the other Ferengi. After everyone else leaves, Krax and Rom have a little side conference, where Rom says they must come up with a new plan. To kill his dear brother! What a twist.
Yeah, I'm also not sure, this is another strange aspect that they're suddenly giving us of Ferengi society, that it's like, oh yeah, the Grand Nagus just decides what business you can do, and then you're the only one who's allowed to do that business because he says so. And I'm like, that doesn't seem very, free market-y.
Well, I mean, he kind of, called dibs on the entire Gamma Quadrant, and then assigned Quark to dole it out, but you're right, that's kind of weird. But, I mean, you kind of gotta, at the very least, there's some wisdom in coordinating. Okay, you take the synthahol, you take the gaming franchises or whatever.
Yeah, so go find that planet with the people from last week. They'll be all into it. But don't let them give you sticks.
Yeah. It's okay, I have to warn you about the stick people. I was so upset. I should have rated the last episode in sticks instead of bits.
Yep.
Missed opportunity.
Rate this episode in sticks. It will make no sense.
Yep. Their brilliant plan turns out to be to lure Quark to a non-existent ship and blow him out the airlock. Fortunately, Cardassian airlocks seem to be designed for this type of use.
Yep. I'm not surprised.
Yeah, exactly. I'm sure this happens all the time under Cardassian, leadership. It's like, you have a dispute, throw the guy out the airlock. Having a big glowing blow the airlock button and apparently no safety features.
Yep.
However, before Rom and Krax can kill Quark, Odo shows up with the very alive Grand Nagus Zek. Bum bum bum.
Who he found super easily.
Yep. How did he find him?
He followed Mayhardu.
Oh, yeah. Okay, easy. Zek orders them to release Quark. The Nagus reveals that this was a ploy to see if Krax was ready to take over as Nagus. A test Krax failed. Zek takes back the title of Nagus and the responsibility of overseeing the exploitation of the Gamma Quadrant. Later, Quark praises Rom's moxie at trying to kill him, and rewards him with a promotion. Thus, all's well that ends well. The end.
Yeah, I don't... that's the thing. It's so Rom's in this episode is the guy who wants to murder his brother, which doesn't really fit Rom later. But at least we're getting his aspiration in life is to take over the bar somehow, which is really a sad aspiration. But whatever, you do you, Rom. And I was really disappointed that when the Nagus is like, what? That kid's going to school, that somebody didn't try to pull out the same excuse that Keiko provided for why he should go to school in the first place, because it was Rom was like, oh yeah, no, that's a good point. He'll learn all about humans and how to scam them or whatever. And I'm like, I think that would work with the Grand Nagus, but nobody even tries it. He's just don't go to school again.
Nobody wants to provoke the Grand Nagus or whatever.
Mm.
My kind of feeling about this episode, and especially Rom trying to assassinate Quark, is just this whole Nagus thing just made everybody feel like they were playing the Game of Thrones or whatever. And so just everybody's acting way out of character. That's kind of how I excuse that.
And also the Nagus' test was like, you should have just sat in the bar and listened to stuff. You failed.
Yeah. Instead of throwing Quark out the airlock, gradually, quietly take power from the shadows or whatever.
Yeah, that part of it made more sense. And he's like, you could have just sat in the bar finding out all the information about the Gamma Quadrant. And I'm like, that's kind of a lame test.
Yeah.
But yeah, the gradually like being the power behind the throne or whatever, that made way more sense.
Yep. So I have to say, the casting of Wallace Shawn as a Ferengi is possibly one of the most brilliant things ever in history. Somebody deserves an award for that.
It seemed really strange to me in like the first half of the episode because like for the longest time they don't let him talk. Like at first he's just silent and then like a laugh creeps in and then eventually he starts talking. And I was like, but how are you like you're missing the best stuff here. Why are we not letting him talk?
You need to let that guy just you need to let him do his thing. Like he needs to be dropping like inconceivables all over the place. I mean, just let him go. But he does have that funny laugh. And I do like the characterization of him as just like ultra horny.
Yeah, sure.
He's like, those voluptuous Rysian females. Yes, very brilliant. I hope they bring him back.
Nah, I'm sure we'll never see him again.
And this is the first episode where instead of old Ferengi sayings, we actually get rules of acquisition.
Yep. Got some rules.
We got number 1 and number 6, I think.
Something like that.
It was like, number 1 was once you have their money, never give it back.
Never give it back. Yep.
Never give it back.
Don't let family stand in the way of something or other.
Yeah. So, anyway, you got any talking points on this episode?
This one is... I don't know. This is, like I said, it's good that we're getting like the Ferengi culture. I like that we're bringing that in, and I like that we're at least kind of trying to get closer to the characterizations on some of these people. I feel like I don't know. I found the whole Jake and Nog B plot to be kind of annoying.
Oh yeah, that was. I would be fine with it if it didn't have that stupid after-school special twist of Jake was teaching Nog to read. Because I find it hard to believe that Nog doesn't know how to read. And then,
that was kind of weird. Like, what has he been doing in school this whole time?
Yeah, like, did Keiko never notice this before? Or, I don't know.
And just the story about Vulcan stole my homework was so ridiculous. And then I feel like O'Brien should have told Sisko. It's like, yeah, not just like, oh, he seems like a bad influence. It's like, no, like, he is talking your kid into lying to the teacher with really bad lies, too. Like, super transparent.
I don't know.
Jake said he saw a Vulcan steal Nog's homework.
I mean, O'Brien might still be unsure about the whole Vulcan situation. Like, he's like, were there bad Vulcans around the promenade stealing homework? I don't want to look like a fool.
I really don't think he bought that in any way.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I would have been fine if it was just like a simple little, like, 3 or 4 beat story of, like, their racist dads tell them not to hang out, and then they hang out anyway. But it was like this whole thing where it's like, that Ferengi, he can't even read. You know what they're like. I was like, ugh. Like, Ferengis aren't even real. I was getting a little grossed out by that.
Also, it's weird that, like, O'Brien is subbing for the teacher while she's gone, despite the fact that he has all of this actual work that he needs to do.
That's a good point.
He's like, oh, sorry I'm late, kids. I was fixing the transporter in Ops. And I'm like, yes, that does seem more important.
Yeah, the people in Ops do need to transport places. Yeah, that's pretty weird. But, I mean, obviously that scene should have had Keiko in it. I guess they just, like, didn't want to spend the money on Keiko this episode, or...
Yeah.
I think they blew their budget on Wallace Shawn. I think that's what happened. You want me to work for scale? Inconceivable.
That's why Mayharju doesn't get any lines. They couldn't afford to pay him at the line level.
So, all right, technically you're an extra, so
yeah, you're a non-speaking extra, so you get scale.
Yep. And then we heard Morin laugh. That was weird.
Yep, I was thinking the same thing when it came up. I was like, oh my gosh, he's like making a noise at Quark's stupid joke.
And then I like the part where like Morin really wants to get into the bar.
Yep, and Quark's like shoves him out, like, go away.
It's like, go away. Yep. And I noticed when I was editing the Dax episode that Morin was actually at the trial.
Wow.
He was like just hanging out in the corner with all the Ferengi, waiting to get the bar back. I was like, nice.
I think what bothers me about this episode is that, and I get it's probably still just that we're really early, but the show doesn't seem like they know what they want to do with Quark. Like sometimes they're trying to advertise him as like this really smart and clever like criminal, and Odo has to be, extra good to catch Quark out. But other times he is just like the biggest idiot who has ever lived. And you're like, you didn't question at all that the Grand Nagus is like, oh, by the way, you're going to be the new Grand Nagus, Quark, who I've just met.
He just takes the robe, and he's like, it all goes to his head instantly.
Yeah, and it's like people are threatening to kill him, and he's like, let's not tell anybody about that, and I'll just give in to like the threats of the first Ferengi who bothers to come and like talk to me after I've become Nagus.
Right.
And
so what I was thinking when I was watching it is like this kind of episode would fit in like Futurama, where like the slightest
Fry
change
becomes the emperor, and
the slightest change of circumstance just totally throws everybody way off character, and it becomes this delightful farce. But like as an episode of Deep Space Nine, it's a little weird. But I was still enjoying just like all the ridiculous, like, the scene when like the Nagus is making his speech about like all the scamming opportunities.
Yep.
And all the Ferengi are like, yes, our word will be our bond until we break it.
Yep.
And then just like this is it's so funny, like just like seeing like Quark like being this pompous like Nagus, or Rom being like, we must kill my dear brother. But yeah, it's like it doesn't quite fit in with the tone of the show.
Yeah. Even
though, the show can be funny, but it's like it goes out there.
Yeah, I think it's just that we're still in the first season. They haven't really landed on exactly what they want everything to be like yet, and so I get that. It's just, I agree. It's an odd one. Mm-hmm. And I think I was saying last time that I was like, I remember this episode as being like dumb but fun, but where's like the fun? This is an episode that's like, okay, this is dumb, but it's also fun.
Yeah. It's like you kind of have to like turn off a part of your brain, but
yeah,
as long as you're able to do that. Yeah, you have any other points?
No, I didn't. Honestly, don't have that much about this episode. It's like I feel like other than Wallace Shawn, I feel like once you're past this episode, it's one of those like, oh, I forgot this existed.
Yeah, and I mean, it's like you kind of have to go through this to, we're kind of like in the experimental phase of the show right now, so it's like you have to kind of like get through this to get to the good Ferengi stuff later. It's kind of weird because it's like there's not a million like points to discuss. It's like a pretty straightforward episode.
Yeah, the story really doesn't. I mean, I guess it's supposed to be a big shock that it's like, oh my gosh, Rom was plotting his brother's death.
Rom,
but
this
it's like,
guy
well,
we met one time.
I was like, we don't really know Rom, so I'm not like shocked. I don't.
Yeah, That's a weird thing about, because I was watching the Mild Fuzz guys, they posted their review of the Dax episode.
Yeah.
And they were like, oh my gosh, it's really great. We're getting to learn so much about Dax. And I'm like, wow, like, you know, coming in from a fresh perspective, I guess really changes how you view the episode or whatever.
Yeah, maybe so.
Whereas, you know, it's like we know all about Dax, and we were kind of like, we don't need it to be, like, explained to us, especially in a really dumb trial episode. And it's like, we know all about the Ferengi, so it's like, we're kind of comparing this against what comes later, in a way.
Yeah, that's a good point. And it's interesting, because I stumbled across, like, this blog that did several shows in that way, where it was like, one guy is new to this show and the other guy is, already seen it as one of their favorites. And so I was reading their takes on both Babylon 5 and Buffy the Vampire Slayer, which were like these two guys basically traded off. Like one of them loved Buffy and the other one loved Babylon 5. And so they like watched those and did a trade-off thing. And it was just very interesting to me. You'd get to these episodes and the one guy is like, oh, I like this flashback at the beginning is the only good part of the episode, and then goes off about like, how everything else sucks. And then the other guy is like, man, I hate flashbacks, and this flashback was terrible, and we didn't need it at all, but the rest of the episode was amazing. And I was like, such like exactly diametrically opposed positions between like the person who's seen them before and the person who hasn't is kind of fascinating.
Yeah. So, yeah, I think that's the source of most of my, like, what I find off-putting. Which I do find it a delightful farce, I'll say that. But just, like, the off-putting elements of it, I think, are just based on, kind of what they settle into later.
Yeah.
Whereas I kind of try to imagine watching this, like, on March, whatever, 1993.
Right, when you've never seen anything about the Ferengi before, so you like all of this is new information, and you're like, oh, well, and like you don't know anything about Rom because like we said, we've only seen him like a couple times and not gotten much about him except that he was an idiot. So you're like, so maybe it is a big shock that it's like, oh my gosh, Rom was trying to kill Quark.
Yep.
And Quark's just like, oh man, way to go.
Yeah.
At the end, these Ferengi are hardcore.
So I think it definitely plays different in that light.
Yeah.
But anyway, do you want to make more points, or you want to just jump into rating?
No, yeah, let's just rate it.
All right. So what do you rate it?
I'm gonna give this one a lieutenant.
Ooh, below the line.
Yeah, it's like just a little bit below the line. Like I don't have strong negative feelings about it, but I don't have any positive feelings about it really.
Sure. Yeah, that's. And I always say like if you're neutral on something, that's almost like being negative on something. Because you like, you always want to be like, you don't want to just sit there and like be neutral-tained or whatever. You don't want to like tell your wife hello.
Yeah, it's like if you're not interested enough to watch the episode, then it's really a waste of the hour that you spent watching it.
So
I suppose.
You got it as lieutenant. You want to put it above or below Captive Pursuit?
I'd probably put it above. I think, you got like Wallace Shawn and stuff, and
I mean, Wallace Shawn, just a little Wallace Shawn goes a long way in my book.
He's a lot of fun, and honestly, if I didn't know about like future developments and stuff, then I might be like, oh, is this the only time we're going to see Wallace Shawn? That maybe it deserves higher just for.
Yeah, sure. I'm gonna give it just because like, despite the stupid after school special storyline, and just how ridiculous it is as a Deep Space Nine episode, in the grand scheme of Deep Space Nine, I'm gonna give it a lieutenant commander, and I'm going to put it also ahead of Captive Pursuit.
Okay.
Yeah, I definitely have to put it ahead of Captain. Because I was just, like, this episode made me laugh in ways that I felt like were on purpose. Not like the last episode where I was, laughing at the episode.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah. And then just like Wallace Shawn, just like what a treat in that Ferengi makeup. So 2.5 pips from me. Yeah, weirdly not a lot to discuss, I guess, on that episode.
Yeah, I was thinking that like after the episode, and I was trying to go over like what I want to touch on. And I'm like, there's really not that much. Like,
I think it's kind of a breath of fresh air because we've just come off a streak of episodes that are just like so annoying or stupid or just not right in some way.
That's true. It's like when there was lots to talk about, it was because like every little thing is jumping out as being like, why would they do this? Or like, what the heck is going on here? Yeah. And here it's just like, well, no, I mean, it's fine.
It's like these aren't quite, these Ferengi aren't quite right, but more Jake and Nog stuff. What's there to say? They did eat those weird ham pyramids again. What are they called?
Those are Jumja sticks.
Jumja sticks. Ugh. But yeah. See, were there any... We had the rules of acquisition. Were there any other firsts in this episode? Because there's so much Ferengi stuff.
Yeah, there is so much Ferengi stuff. Let me think.
See if there's any good trivia out there.
Yeah, I was like, I didn't really look over the wiki entry on this one, so maybe I'll glance real quick. Yeah. The 2 working titles for this episode were Friends and Foes and Friend Like Me, which neither of those would have been a good title, so that's good.
I think this must have been right after Aladdin came out.
So during the story meeting, the idea here was to do a The Godfather story.
Okay.
Oh, okay, so like the big meeting of all the Ferengi was supposed to be a Godfather-y thing.
Sure, yeah, like now that you said that, I totally see it. Yeah.
Yep, this is the first time the rules are mentioned.
Yeah, the Nagus makes way more sense as like just a petty like cartel or organized crime boss than as like what he becomes later.
Oh my gosh, so apparently maybe it was closer than I thought. So according to the guy, because you remember I mentioned last time that it said that that last episode was like the most expensive of the season, and apparently they were already like over budget at that point in the season. So at this point, they're apparently looking for ways to like keep the budget down, and so Ira Bear specifically remembers that he was trying to keep speaking roles to a minimum because speaking actors get paid more.
Sure.
And so he's like, as I was writing the script, one of the things I was thinking over and over was like, does this person need to speak? Dare they speak?
That definitely explains. I don't know. I feel like there's a lot of speaking roles in this episode because I feel like at least 2. I mean, there's the Nagus and Cracks, and at least 2 of the other Ferengi. Felt like
the other Ferengi in there. I feel like they're all yelling stuff when Quark gets declared Grand Nagus. So. Yeah,
and plus we have Rom and Nog, who were not. I don't think they were regulars. I mean, I don't know how like Hollywood pay works exactly. Yeah. It's such a complicated thing, but
apparently this was a popular episode with the fans when it came out, which they were worried that the fans would reject more comedic episode that centered around the Ferengi. I was gonna mention, except that it seems spoilery. It's like I'm like, do we ever see Cracks again?
I was trying to think that.
According to this, no. This is the only time he's seen or mentioned.
I was like, and like I like how he kind of like mirrored his performance off of Wallace Shawn. He was like, kind of talking like him.
You buy them as like father and son. I get what she's going for. Yeah.
Oh, the first time the fire caves are mentioned. Yep. Although he calls them the fire caverns, that's a tiny difference.
Apparently, after this, Morn never opens his mouth again.
Wow. So that's like the last time we hear Morn laugh.
Yep. Interesting. So yeah, there's not a first, but a last.
Anyway, any final thoughts?
No, not really.
Yeah. Should go ahead and wrap it up.
Yep.
So, I think that does it for us today. If you've made it this far, thank you for listening. I'm Fletcher. About to say goodbye is Data.
Bye.
Have a wonderful day, and drop by anytime you're feeling homesick.